When it's that
Right.
passion thing, it's like it does not have the same emotional feeling that I'm working. It's like it's fun to you. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to work on this
Mhm.
project. And I forgot that 5 hours then went. Where if I was in a normal, I'm working here because I need a paycheck, then you
Right.
look at your clock and you're like, when is lunchtime? When is break
Right.
time again? Oh, I
Yeah.
need to go get something. Where when you're in purpose and in that entrepreneur space, most people are in a passion and it's
Yeah.
like an accelerator. It's like you forget time.
Welcome to Mastering the Numbers. I'm your host, Joe Mallo. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Joe Mallo with Lead Edge Consulting Group, powered by Focal Point Business and Executive Coaching. Welcome to another episode of Mastering the Numbers. My guest today is Tanisha Taylor with Tanisha Taylor Coaching. Tanisha, thanks for taking part in my interview series. It's good to have you.
Yes, thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here.
Great, great. I'm looking forward to our conversation. For the audience out there that may not be familiar with you and your company, can you tell us a little bit about Tanisha Taylor Coaching?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I am Tanisha Taylor with Tanisha Taylor Coaching. And so, the beauty of when you're starting a business and when you're able to create from the ground up, you want to start from a place of passion. And so, passion comes for me with working with young adults. So, I created a whole business model just for them. We know that there's so many complexities to adulthood. How do you manage money? How do you have relationships? How do you eat well? How do you grow your faith? What do I want to do with my life? And those things are very
Right.
challenging. So, here at Tanisha Taylor Coaching, we help our young adults take a very complicated life process and give them foundational steps to build, to make it simple, to make it easy. And then from there, they can add, as like when you're building a home, you start with the foundation and then you
Right.
can build a one story. You can have a mansion. You can have a colonial. That part we leave to the young adults to do that space. So we give you the groundwork when it comes to your faith, when it comes to fitness and health, family relationships and finance and entrepreneurship. And then from there, as you grow through the stages of life on your journey, you can decide what your house looks like. What do
Yeah.
you want to put in those other processings? So that's the main cornerstone for Tanisha Taylor Coaching is that we give young adults a foundation and a simple and easy process through training and coaching and community.
Yeah. I think that's such a powerful service that you're providing. And being a father of a 17-year-old who's getting ready to graduate and go to college or move on to the next step in his life, I just see a huge need for those types of services for young adults. So it's great that you started the organization. So I know you talked about it being a passion. So if you can just elaborate a little bit more on that, what inspired you to start your business? Was it that just that passion, or was it more?
So I believe it was passion plus some other things. So I would say the first thing was the spiritual component. So again, when you go through life, you have different parts of your being. You have different things that you do evaluations on and where should I be in life? What's the next step for me? So one of the pieces was the prayer component. I did pray when I got the unction that there is something more, there is something different that I need to be doing. I did go into a place of prayer, like, okay, how do I orchestrate this? How does this make sense? And once I got that comfort level there, then I start using the next parts of my intellect. Okay, you did all of this education experience in the banking field. I was in the banking industry for 28 years. I went and got my MBA in business, real estate license, worked with franchise, all these wonderful things that are the other part of your life that you're learning and growing. But after you get all this information, you get all this knowledge, you get all the skill set, then there should be a time that you become, as I would say now, the person that prepares the way.
Right.
So when I'm preparing the way, I'm like, who do I want to? You can prepare the way for anyone, but then everyone has that niche or that person or that heartbeat that says, you know what, this is who I'm called to. This is really my assignment. And so taking all of the professional parts of my life, it became the young adult. And it was the young adult because I went back to my young adulthood and I seen where certain people, certain situations, certain things actually created the foundation for my young adult to adult. And so I said, you know what? We sometimes we don't send or we don't spend concentrated attention in the beginnings of things because we think maybe they're insignificant, maybe they're not listening. But I remember people talking to me, parents, teachers, professionals, and most of those moments happen as a young adult that I either had a chance to make a right decision or wrong, but
Right.
a lot of times when that voice or that person was speaking to me and I made that right decision, I seen how it affected my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and now going into my 50s. So I was like, you know what? I want something that we're getting instead of letting people go through a lot of obstacles, mistakes, and hardships. Let's go right where you start building. And then now you have less collateral damage if
Right.
the ones that are listening, that are preparing the way, are giving good resources, tools, guidance to that process. Now that helps that young adult have a greater chance of success in
Right.
money, relationships, fitness, and health, opposed to just letting people just go through life and hopefully you figure it out
Right.
and you figure it out from the wrong people. Sometimes for young adults, that's our peers.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
right.
now you have this building that now you got to either tear it down or you got to rebuild it. And so we want to kind of change the narrative and let's help our young adults at the beginning of their life process so that when we're parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and nieces, and we see these young people aspire to do great things with their life,
Yeah.
man, that should make everyone, any person, feel like that joy to say I was a part of, or I was a part of a business that supported the preparing the way for young adults.
Yeah. And we always want to make sure that they make the right decisions, but we also know that they're going to make wrong decisions sometimes because we all do.
Mhm.
But maybe having that support in the background that you offer to help them recover from the wrong decisions and kind of right the ship and get them going in the
Mhm.
right direction. So I think that's important. I think everybody has to make a mistake here and there just to learn, right?
Absolutely. It's weird. That would be a false sense of reality if we said your life would
Right.
be perfect. So we
Yeah.
don't tell people that your life is going to be perfect, but
Nope.
we do tell you we can give you the resources and tools, even if you go off course to get back on course,
Yeah.
or to just say, hey, we're your biggest cheerleader because we don't
Yeah.
work on perfection. We work on progress. So even
Yeah.
if you make a mistake, even if you fall in a hole, we're going to pick you up, dust you off,
Yeah.
and say, hey, let's try option B, huh?
And I think that's what people need, especially young adults, so they
Hmm.
don't continue to make mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake.
Hmm.
I think that's
Absolutely.
great. So what have been some of the biggest challenges or struggles that you've had to overcome in growing your business?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenge right now, because the business model is very new, so it's still in that newer stage. This is just our second year. And so the first part of, I would say, like the year and a half to almost up to the second year was the building of the business. There's not a whole lot of business structures that are set up just for young adults in the space of what I'm doing. So it wasn't a lot of people for me to really just go and look and kind of like, look how did they do that thing? It was kind of
Right.
like, oh, it's crickets out here. I don't know. We don't really coach young adults like that, or
Yeah.
we don't create models for a business like that. So I'm in kind of a blue ocean scenario. And so
Yeah.
now it's kind of like I may need to be the person that's setting some of those models or some of those processing. So that would, in my thought, would say would be the hardest or one of the most challenges is that I really didn't have a go-to, not in terms of business model and business systems, but for
Yeah.
this particular model. Like there's
Yeah.
not a role model pathway that I
Yeah.
can just click and say, I seen this particular person or this person, so I'm going to kind of follow or guide under their direction. And then I would say at this point of the business model, we're in our full execution of getting young adults, one, understanding what this means and how
Yeah.
this is a value point to their life. And so that will be right now in the business model of us being in still like the infancy growing
Yeah.
stage would be that part. How are we going to get young adults really to see the value of having a life coaching program, having a community that can help them with these things that are very challenging, because it's
Yeah.
really something that hasn't been introduced in the market in this kind of way.
Right. Yeah, it makes it hard when there's not somebody to replicate. I think
Mhm,
that's why with franchises that are out there, you can go into a franchise and you they already have the plan. You just have to go
mhm,
in and replicate it. But it also means that you're a pioneer in what you're
mhm.
trying to do, and hopefully, people will replicate you in the future. So I
Yes.
think that's great as well. Is there anything that you would have done differently in the starting or the growth of your business to this point? Any mistakes that you said, oh man, I wish I would have done it different?
I would say one of the biggest things that I know that's very helpful that I learned through the process is creating and taking time to really do a strategy in all the parts of the business.
Yeah,
Like sometimes when we just get happy with the ideal and the passion, and then we start doing things,
yeah,
and then you do a lot of, and you continue to do this, it's okay to like, that's part of the business journey, trying something and oh, that didn't work and putting an X on it and then trying something else. I think that's the whole entrepreneur world is, an ideal comes up and you try it. And a lot of them, sometimes they fail. That was not a good idea. And they didn't come to that. So I think for me, I may have spent more time because now that's how I created the entrepreneur journey is to spend more time in strategy and thinking and focus planning so that you have less, uh-oh, that was not a good idea.
right.
But you have trying moments or creative moments that have purpose and direction with the strategy in place and not just passion and ideal doing something and then it's not the right thing. So I would say always, if you can have strategies in all your areas, your finance, your credit, your legal, your tech, your marketing, sit down, even if it's just a small few paragraphs or, like your business plan. But outside of the business plan, just your own strategic planning in all the layers of the business so that now you can kind of see if there's congruency in it, if it makes sense for 5 years and 10 years, and then you can build appropriately. So that was some of the learning things that I learned in the process at foundational stage that I am actually putting in the model so that we can help people if they start business that they've really thought about it and not just got
Right.
happy about the ideal and start moving.
Right. To take it a little different direction, when you're talking to friends or family or other professionals out there that don't own their own businesses, what are some of the common misconceptions that you hear about owning a business?
This is the biggest question that I get asked about in this space is how do you get money?
Yeah.
Where do you get money from? How do they pay? And I thought it was kind of strange when people were saying that. And I was like, well, how do they eat? How do they go to and get a pizza? How do they buy their clothes? It was just kind of a different concept of like, businesses are the same starting as large corporations and they were at once a small entity that grew
Yeah.
and I think sometimes when you're starting a business people forget that part and they don't allow or they don't look at you growing in those stages. They just now immediately see the larger corporation or the bigger business and then
Right.
they automatically compare you at level of someone's 10th year and you're like, well, I just started last year. So and so I think that is probably the biggest misconceptions when someone says, I'm starting my business or I have a business, that we just go to the big thing like, oh, how many
Yeah.
customers do you have? Oh, how
Right.
much is in your revenue? Oh, and it's like, oh, hold up, please. Close the brakes. I just started. I'm just and
Yeah.
then you get that like, oh, okay. And it's almost like a gray area for people instead of like, oh, okay, an understanding of yes,
Yeah.
you're in the beginning stage, just like Starbucks had a beginning
Yeah.
and all the big brands had a beginning in their basement, in
Right. Right.
their bedroom, in the
That's right.
ideal. And I think if people, just in general, when people are new to business and starting, when the world looks at that, and if they've seen that perception and went there opposed to just kind of looking, because sometimes the comments that can be said, it can be discouraging, or, if you don't have your
Yeah.
direction and your strategy and plan, if you're just starting and they ask you how many clients you have, and if you don't have any because you're working on it and they look at you kind of weird, what positioning, are you going to take? Or are you going to
Yeah.
say, okay, well, I just got to get out there and do the things because it takes time, or, it takes
Yeah.
time to do this process that I heard from a lady at a cozy conference, and it was killer. I think she's the CEO or in one of those directors. They just had a big summit, and she did a awesome and amazing presentation about client attraction,
Yeah.
and it's a formula that can be used in all of your life. And so I love pieces when I go to different networking events, and that's my continuing education. So when I'm
Yeah.
out in the marketplace, I'm like, okay, I'm losing some of that from leaving the corporate and the career where we have training and development. So networking and going to networking groups and being a part of networking groups is my continuing education. Because when you
Yeah.
get amazing speakers that pour like content in you and growth in you and development, it now what helps you to bring that back to your business and help you
Yeah.
be successful. And so when you get some of the, why did you leave? Why did you stay in banking? What made you do that? What made you want to not get a paycheck in sequence?
Yeah.
You go back to your passion points and you go back
Right.
to what is the driver behind it. And after being in career space 28 plus years, that was my foundation. And
Yeah.
that foundation helps me to be a better business person because I did those things in that space. Now I'm
Yeah.
just doing those things in this space for me, for legacy, for Tanisha Taylor Coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody needs to realize that a new business starts at zero.
Mhm.
and, and you have to be prepared to start at zero and build it from there. So, um,
Yes.
so how do you balance your professional and your personal life? How do you find the right balance?
So this is a really good question because typically when I have conversations with entrepreneurs, I think we share similar like personalities, similar drives, and a lot of times you're like high achievers. So you know how to grind, you know how to like if you got a task and it's like, okay, is this going to take me 10 hours? I'm on 10 hours, I'm doing it. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to drink.
Right.
I'm not because I'm going to get this accomplished. And so that has been like one of my, it can be a very good thing to have, but it also can be a very damaging thing without balance.
Right.
So when I do have a goal or I need to set them, I know that I have this inner kick in that will kick in. But at the same time, I've learned over years and experience that now I need to balance that. So even
Yeah.
though I know that I can go hard, I can go hard 10 hours for you. I won't, I'll forget food. I'll forget some other things because I know what my end goal is to do. But
Right.
that's not the most effective because there is family, there is
Right.
fun and leisure, there is relationships with spouse or, significant others. There are other things outside the drive of your business. And I believe with entrepreneurs, even for myself, when you're really passionate about that thing, it
Yeah.
doesn't feel, and we hear people say this very in terms, it doesn't feel like work to you. And it's true.
Right.
When it's that
Right.
passion thing, it's like it does not have the same emotional feeling that I'm working. It's like it's fun to you. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to work on this
Mhm.
project. And I forgot that 5 hours then went. Where if I was in a normal, I'm working here because I need a paycheck, then you
Right.
look at your clock and you're like, when is lunchtime? When is break
Right.
time again? Oh, I
Yeah.
need to go get something. Where when you're in purpose and in that entrepreneur space, most people are in a passion and it's
Yeah.
like an accelerator. It's like you forget time. And so for me, how I have to balance that is you got to schedule it. You
Yeah.
have to schedule it because if you don't schedule it, you will go into grind mode and whatever project you're working on, whatever thing that you're doing, you're going to forget about some of the things of life. So in that, I schedule and I say, you know what? Let me schedule out my day because I'm
Right.
very goal oriented. So if it says block this, block that, but then I have to block in. I have to block in time with my grandson.
Yeah.
I even told
Right.
my daughter, he said, you do not play with him because you're in school, you're doing a business. I said, you gotta block it in. Don't tell him what time that block is, because you know you're gonna say
Yeah.
it's 5 o'clock. You're not
Yeah.
playing with him. But now you have a consistency that
Right.
drives through that. And that is how we be successful with scheduling things and being consistent in it. So now if
Yeah.
you're not spending time or doing that thing, for me, I work out at this time, is blocked in. Because if I didn't
Yeah.
block my workout in, if I didn't block in to eat my healthy meal, what's going to happen? My passion piece going to kick in. It's going to
Yeah.
be 3 o'clock. I ain't had no water. I ain't had nothing to eat. I did nothing that made me happy. I didn't exercise. And the well-being of an entrepreneur is in all these things. So not
Right.
just working your business, but you have to work you and keeping yourself in self-care. Did you have enough hydration for the day? Did you have your healthy meal? Because if you're going to grind, you need to have your body in optimal position to do that, so that when you're taking those breaks, you're taking that rest, it's going to just better your business. So
Yeah.
now when I look at things and I say, you know what? Hey, water break. Did I get my ounces in? Because that's scheduled in. Then those things are going to now help me to be a better balanced person.
Yeah. Yeah, you said something that I believe in wholeheartedly, which is calendaring. I think that,
Hmm.
I work with business owners all the time and we talk about calendaring. You have to schedule it
Hmm.
because as business owners, like you said, with passion, we'll work 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day and not even think about it. So, and that's
Hmm.
not healthy. It's not
It's
healthy
not.
for us. And it's certainly not healthy for our families. So that's great. Well, so on top of that, I guess take that one more step. How do you maintain your focus and your motivation when things get busy or maybe things get a little rough?
Mhm. So motivation for me, that's I'm not lacking in that area. It's like for me, I think I was born with a whole energy personality, because that's what I'm kind of known for. Most people,
Yeah.
if they know me, it's considered like the Energizer Bunny, or it's Tigger. I didn't even know that. I was like, who from the Winnie the Pooh series, like she's
Yeah.
always feeling energy. And I really want, I will say this. I always go back to the grounding of who I am as a person, in my Christian's walk. I mean, that is like a whole motivation for me. Like my faith and the principles, and a lot of these principles I got when I was very, very young. And they're key drivers that when I need motivation, when I need putting myself in the right mindset, that's my first place to go. My prayer posture, the things that I do in my spiritual space of
Yeah.
going to church and ministering and working with other people. Those are the things that motivate me in that giving and that serving component. That's really, I would say, for me, is when I do get in a low or lacking, I'm like, okay, I need to worship. I need to pray. I need to do those things. And that keeps me on fire. That
Yeah.
keeps the fire when things go downward, or there's an obstacle in life, or the busyness. I'm like, pause, break. I need to pray. Pause, break. I need to worship. Pause, break. Let me get to church. Let me make sure all of those things
Yeah.
that really my value propositions for my life
Yeah.
are now going to help in those other areas, because that foundational piece that is really important to me, it drives my motivation.
Right. Right. Um, so beyond that, how do you stay ahead of all your competitors in the industry? I know you said you're starting on a newer path in coaching than what we've seen around here, but how do you try to stay ahead of the competition?
I think what helps me in that is you got to keep learning, and you got to
Yeah.
keep putting yourself in spaces. So I am a firm believer now in networking. Like when I
Mhm.
worked for the bank, it didn't really require a lot of networking the way entrepreneurship has for me. So how I kind of stay ahead of things is being out in the marketplace. if you're not out in the marketplace, if you're not reading, if you're not checking in on things, and sometimes you may not have time to read all of these things. But when you're in the marketplace and you're in networking events, you're talking to those people that have the
Yeah.
expertise. So if you go to a network event, there's going to be possibly a banker there, a lawyer there, a nurse there, a doctor there, a fireman there, or, you're going to get, and what, through conversations, you're going to hear what's the hot things in their market because they're going to be passionate about the industry that they're in. So they're going to be like,
Right.
oh, Tanisha, did you hear about the new? And so I believe if you're not able to just keep up in reading everything that comes across, because we don't sometimes have time to chunk down all of this information that way, is that you immerse yourself with people that are experts in a lot of variety of fields
Yeah.
because you're going to hear something. Oh, wow, I didn't know that that was the newest AI feature that was coming out. Oh, I didn't know that you can get that particular app, or this is the new wave. And I believe those conversations through networking groups and being not just a one time, but going to that. If you join a networking group, group, make sure that you show up to that group. Make
Yeah.
sure because that's how you're going to build relationships so that people are going to know what you need. So they'll come to you like, Tanisha, they may not, it may be your industry different from theirs, but they went to another event or
Yeah.
another seminar or conference. But because you're in relationship, they're going to email you. I have people all the time because I show up and network and they're like, Tanisha, by the way, I was at such and such. Here's a contact person for you. And then it leads to another opportunity. So I believe relationships, connecting, networking is always going to keep you on the cutting edge because you're in the marketplace
Yeah.
with the people that are experts and they're excited and passionate about what they do, and they're going to bring that information to you.
Right.
And then you
Yeah.
know how to work your business.
Right. Exactly. I found a tremendous amount of benefit in networking over the course of the last few years. So I will agree with you there. What do you find most challenging about the coaching industry?
I would say the most challenging now is because there's so many people that say they're a coach. So it's like now
Yeah.
it is a very trendy profession. If you look around, if you go through social media, if you go to place, there's that term was not as in years before as loosely used that everyone is pretty much now. I've heard people say, I know everyone's your coach, everyone's a coach now,
Yeah.
And so I think it has caused, depending on because some of the coaching dynamics may not have like other fields where you have a certification process. Now, there are certified coaching programs, and so that just depends, but that's not where everyone has to go
Right.
through to say that they're a coach or to start a coaching business. So I would say at this point, some of the negatives or some of the experiences that are negative to that space is that anyone and everyone can kind of put that on their
Yeah.
name. I'm a coach. And so
Right.
now that can water down some of the experience levels of others because now it's like, oh, it's kind of like that. Oh, you're a coach. Yeah, I know I've
Yeah.
met 700 of them today. So I
Right.
think that's one of the things now you have to, in a sea of a red sea now with coaching, is that how are you going to set yourself aside? For me, it's pretty easy because the client that I've chose. So
Right.
the client base in my coaching model kind of sets me aside because it's like, hey, if I Google who works with young adults and does coach, it's like there's a very small amount. But in
Right.
coaching in itself, there's many, many, many
Yeah.
opportunities in that space. So you do have to find a space that'll make your set you aside or apart from your
Right.
competition,
I,
even if
I,
it's the
I,
person that you serve. And for me, it's that
right.
case. I'm in a
Yeah.
blue ocean because not many
Right.
people like to hang out with the young people,
Right. Right.
especially in making money in that
Yeah. It is.
capacity.
Right. Right. It is a little difficult. So where do you see your business in the next 12 to 36 months?
My ideal vision is for this to hit not just local, but national, and also global. The whole model of creating the virtual component of the business was so that it wouldn't put any constraints on what young adult could have access.
Yeah.
So even if you are across the country and you had access to an app, you have access to me, you have access to
Yeah.
my community, because there's so many areas, so many people that are in need of this service, that I did not want it to be that you had to live in the region that I live.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're somewhere in France and you're an international young adult, because now we got this AI and we got these wonderful things. I
Yep.
just had someone, again, what you said, cutting edge, that said, you know what, Tanisha, do you know about this app that it will convert your voice to different languages?
Yeah.
And I said, so if I wanted to be on a Zoom session and I needed to speak Spanish, or I needed to speak French, or I needed to speak whatever in the global space, I could provide that service. And
Yeah.
my heart posture is, I see my business being for all people, because money is for all people, fitness and health is for all people, faith
Right.
is for all people. That's
Right.
life, the quality of life, and how we can immerse that for young adults, and then being able to pay for it themselves, because they need to learn how to invest in themselves. So when they take their currency and they pour into the economic system, and then they get a value out of it, then this thing cannot just touch where I'm at here in Twinsburg, Ohio. But if it's all the way across the world and some young person says,
Right.
we don't have financial literacy here, we don't have an entrepreneurship program here in my country or in my
Yeah.
state, but I'm just one fingertip, because every young adult has one of these.
Yes, they do.
If anything that they do have, no matter what demographic, financial positioning, the
Yeah.
common denominator is this thing. The
Amen.
common denominator is this thing. And this is how you get
Yeah.
connected, Tanisha
Yeah.
Taylor Coaching. And that's
Yeah.
where I see my business in 18 to
Okay.
36
Great.
months.
That's great. If there's something that the pandemic did for us positively, there's
Hmm.
probably not a lot, but the one thing that it did was the fact that it let everybody know that, you know what, you can do business through Zoom. You can do business over the phone to some degree. It's,
Hmm.
so I think there's a lot of positives that came out of that part of the pandemic. Although I seem
Absolutely.
like I'm on Zoom nonstop. So I also have to get out of the office.
Right.
That's a challenge for me sometimes. So what's the best business advice anybody's ever given you?
The best business advice, I would say, would be my mom. And I want to say my mom, because my mother has been in the entrepreneur space all her life.
Yeah,
And one thing that I can say, that she may have not, like, volume speaks louder than words sometimes, and
yeah,
watching people's actions. And what I've seen in my mom in the last 40 years of running her business, that every business model is different. And there's not just one A to B to C on how a business becomes successful. And I've seen some very unusual ways of business practices in the last 40 years that let me know that it doesn't necessarily have this A to B to C to produce that end result. And I think that has helped me with helping other people that want to do business. Yes, we have role models and we have things, but you have to find what your business needs, because what your business needs, or what path your business needs to take, may not be like that person, even though it's the same industry, even though the same. And I seen my mother do that, that as out of the box that it was, and how some things didn't make any sense on the business side of what I knew on career space, but the revenue and the profitability still happen.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, how do we distinguish or say that we're a business? Is that thing profitable? Do
yeah,
you make money? And if you do, and how you get to making that money, there's a whole lot of different colorful ways in between. long as you're financially stable and doing it and you're not doing anything illegal and you
Right.
have the protections of things that protect it, the stages through it, they can be so different, but your
Yeah.
end result needs that it needs to be profitable and you learn how to have that thing make money and it consistently make money year after year.
Yeah.
And I would say, even though she didn't directly say those words to me in words, I seen it in action.
Right.
And I created and said, oh, I see what this is because I didn't watched
Yeah.
it in person and seen
Right.
how someone that didn't have a college education, someone that didn't go to all these tech schools, these MBA programs. I am the person that did that. But I seen
Yeah.
someone do none of that and
Right.
was just as successful. So it made me think and say, there's more than one way to get to having a successful
Absolutely.
business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hard work and will.
hmm
So, um, final question. Let's say you run into a business owner. They're a couple years into owning their business, but they're struggling and they're stressed and they're frustrated. What kind of advice would you give them?
The advice that I would give them is to find someone in your industry that's doing it well.
Yeah.
You need to find a good coach, a good mentor, because they're going to help you identify where you're struggling. And once you're able, because sometimes when you're in that thing and it's just you talking to you, you talking to you is good, but then you also need someone looking in and being able to pinpoint and be able to say, okay, this is where you're stuck. This is why you're not doing that. So definitely every business person should have a business coach, a business mentor, somebody that you regularly meet. Don't just wait to meet with them when you're struggling. But if you say at when I start my business, I need to have an accountability business partner. I need whether that be a coach, a mentor, a family member that's in the business, whatever that needs to be, you need to have that person. And that person you need to be speaking to regularly. Like you said,
Yeah.
calendar. Do y'all meet once a month? Do y'all meet every week? Whatever that frequency is, that is going to help you stay on target. And also, if you are having problems, they will be identified early on because you are having these conversations with your coach, mentor, accountability partner. And that would be my advice to anyone starting midway through. It's not like you just use these people at the beginning. They need to be connected with you through
Right.
life.
I would agree. Um, if anybody wants to get a hold of you to discuss how you work with your clients, I know you showed us on your phone a couple minutes ago, but what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I would say the best way is to go to my website. My website is going to link you to every possible. So I always tell everyone TanishaTaylorCoaching.com. It's very easy to remember because it's my first
Yeah.
name, my last name, and what I do
Yeah.
coaching.com. And their phone numbers, email, address, all of the social media sites, all of that is there. So I do drive people to website because it gives
Right.
everything and it's easy to remember because it's my first name, last name, coaching.com.
Great, great. Um, Everybody out there that's young adults that are looking for a little bit of guidance, please reach out to Tanisha Taylor Coaching. Listen, I really, really appreciate you being on today. This interview. I'm glad that we got introduced to each other a couple weeks back,
Yeah.
and everybody out there that is listening. I appreciate you listening to the podcast as well. Tanisha, it was great talking to you. Take care and have a great weekend coming up.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I appreciate
You're welcome. Take care.
it. Bye bye.
You've just tuned into another episode of Mastering the Numbers. We hope you found valuable insight to boost your financial success. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Keep pushing forward, and thanks for listening.